Questions on starting or buying foreclosures with private money. Are the funds sent directly to you? Great content on YouTube, by the way. I really appreciate it. Have you ever had the property reclaimed by the plaintiff? If so, how did you navigate the private lender's funds? Okay, these are great questions. So, first off, I would say that when you are dealing with private money, it is always best practice to get those funds wired to the title company. The title company should hold the funds in their escrow account until the property is cleared to close. Now, if you are buying a foreclosure, then you're going to have to put some type of deposit down. The money is going to go to the county. So you wouldn't necessarily be closing through a title company so much as you would be closing there. However, I would still use the title company to handle the promissory note and the mortgage, because how I would recommend doing this is borrowing more than the purchase price on the foreclosure. So if you're going to use private funds, if you are going to buy a foreclosed property for 40 grand and then you are going to need to put another 40 grand into it, then you should borrow 80 grand and you should, man, I'm sitting here thinking, you're talking about foreclosures, which are handled through the court. So the funds are going to have to be wired to you. I would check with the title company that you're comfortable with working at, and I would see if they have the ability to cut a check to that. That way you could sit there and record the promissory note and the mortgage from the title company. I suppose it's not a big deal, but the money that is from the private lender would be unsecured until that property is rightfully yours. And you don't really want that money to be unsecured. You want that money to be secured for the private lender's sake on a property. So that money would have to sit somewhere until you have the ability to close on it. So do your best to work through a title company. If the funds need to be wired directly to you to make the deal work, I suppose you could do that, but I would just do so cautiously, very cautiously. We have never had a property reclaimed by the plaintiff. If there's one thing that I know about the government, it is that they give such a long heads up, so much contact by mail. There are so many different ways to get out of this before it actually gets to the foreclosure, that by the time you actually make it to the foreclosure, the chances of the plaintiff coming back and now figuring out a solution are extraordinarily slim. If they were driven or motivated to do it, they would have had ample opportunity before it got to this point where you are bidding on it. So, and the foreclosure has already taken place. I would say that if whoever the plaintiff has the ability or at some point figures out how to keep the property, you should probably work with them and let them do that and not get too flustered by it, because the odds of that happening are so slim. You should probably be supportive, and I imagine the courts would as well. And I imagine that the courts would also work with you to get your funds back, so that it is, so that you're not out of anything except time, I suppose. So that's what I would say. Every municipality is different. I had a comment on the foreclosure video recently where somebody was just saying that everything that I said in the video was wrong, which may be true for wherever that person is operating out of. But here locally, for all the experiences that I've had in working inside of Montgomery County in Ohio, everything I said was accurate. So it's probably going to play out a little bit differently in each different municipality. Yeah, if the payment needs to go directly to the county, then I suppose you're going to have to touch that unsecured money for a second, and I would just secure it as soon as you're able to. So as soon as you close with the county and it's recorded, go through a title company, get that promissory note and mortgage drafted up and recorded. That way you're securing your private lender's funds. I suppose you could just go through an attorney, but I would still want a title company to be involved throughout the entire process, because even though you are closing with the county, you still are going to want to do a title search. You're still going to want to get title insurance on the property. Even though they're not necessarily going to do the closing, you still want to get a title company's approval to close, because the county, even though they probably have great intentions, it is very much so possible for them to miss things. In fact, a good friend of mine recently purchased a property from a foreclosure, paid the county, and inside of his due diligence with the title company, they uncovered a multitude of title issues that the county was not able to resolve, so they gave him his funds back. Now, it was a long process. It probably took a month and a half or so in order to get that resolved. But nonetheless, if he didn't use the title company, chances of him ever learning of these would have been pretty slim or too late. So go through the title company as much as you can. I was wondering from a contract point of view with a private lender. Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about real estate and working with private lenders is you can essentially do virtually anything that you and a private lender agree upon, so long as it is secured. As soon as you start getting into unsecured funds, you should be a little bit more careful and cautious so as not to inadvertently or accidentally violate any types of security regulations with like the SEC or whatnot. So long as it's secured and it is a mortgage, then it's not a security. So you just don't want to accidentally make something a security that shouldn't be a security. So you should just be careful when it comes to unsecured funds and be very diligent about exactly what you're doing. So I would do your very best to make it to where you touch those unsecured funds as little as possible. But similar to this cost segregation question, I would say sitting down with an attorney that is familiar with foreclosures, real estate transactions, I would get their perspective on how you should execute and maneuver this. It would probably be ideal if you had funds elsewhere to close on this, either from credit cards, lines of credit, or anything like that. Then you would be able to close with your funds and then do like a very quick refinance once the foreclosure is deeded over to you. That's how I would recommend doing that.
Thanks for watching that clip. I thought that was a good question. And I think you can ask good questions too. Join us every Friday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for a live stream Q&A where we answer plenty of questions just like this one. In the meantime, consider subscribing to the channel if you want more of this content. And if you want to increase your deal flow, analyze properties better, and help me feed my family, click the link below for a free 7-day trial of PropStream.